Peter Strzok says, just went to a Southern Virginia Walmart. I could smell the Trump support. I cannot believe that a top official of this government, with the kind of power that these people had, would try to exercise their own prejudices, and that's what this is. It's open, blatant prejudice. Would try to use that in order to overturn a democratic election. And to my mind, that's the real crisis here. And it is a crisis, because if there's not accountability, if this can go on in the United States of America, well, then my goodness gracious, we don't have a democracy anymore.
That was Senator Josh Hawley earlier today exposing the real corruption scandal inside, sadly, the highest levels of our government. Joining us now with more reaction to today's Senate hearing, Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, Fox News contributor Karl Rove had a great column on this, by the way. Senator, sorry, I can't call you Josh. A little disrespectful. I'm a professional.
Sure you can.
But in all seriousness, I want to know if you agree with my conclusion. The Attorney General's answers to Lindsey Graham were clear. He's not changing his mind on the Mueller report. Karl wrote about this today. And that these other issues are now in full investigative mode. Do you agree with that conclusion of mine?
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. The Attorney General couldn't have been more clear. The Mueller report lays this false narrative of collusion and coordination and conspiracy to rest. There was none of that stuff. There was no obstruction. What we need to find out now, Sean, is how do we get here? How do we get to the place that the FBI is treating the President of the United States as a spy, the elected president? And I'll tell you why. It's because of contempt. It's because people like Peter Strzok, a top official in the FBI at the time, have nothing but contempt and condescension for the people who voted for Donald Trump. They mock them. They look down on them. Peter Strzok doesn't want the people who voted for Donald Trump to actually have their votes count. And that's why we are where we are. We've got to make sure that this never happens again.
Karl, the senator is right because of what I've been saying for a long time now, that if we don't, I love the FBI. My mom was a prison guard. My dad, family court probation. All my cousins, cops. 2 guys were dating. They made it to the FBI. I don't want to talk about the few in the FBI that did wrong when so many, the 99%, do it all right. But if we don't get to the bottom of it, we lose. We have a serious issue in terms of this country being a country that is founded on a constitution and rule of law.
Yeah. Well, look, I think Inspector Horowitz is looking into some of these issues, and the Attorney General today clearly signaled that all of these are going to be reviewed and reviewed in detail. It would be nice if, as a country, we could come together and agree that some of these practices shouldn't be used, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. But the committee hearing today demonstrated to me there's a complete lack of self-awareness on the part of Senate Democrats, which makes them unlikely to come around and focus on the problems we face as a country. Take Senator Blumenthal. He went after Attorney General Barr, saying, you're defending the president lying to the American people. Well, wait a minute. Wasn't Richard Blumenthal the senator who lied for years about having been a Vietnam War veteran? Cory Booker went after the Attorney General, saying you're attempting to normalize contact between American campaigns and Russian operatives who provide material support to that campaign. Well, what did Christopher Steele do with the money that he was paid by the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign? He goes and contacts KGB and FSB agents in Moscow to say, do you have anything dirty to say about Donald Trump?
I think the evidence is overwhelming and incontrovertible. Hillary Clinton violated the Espionage Act. She had the intent when she deleted BleachBit, beat up devices with hammers, and pulled SIM cards. That was the intent for the underlying crime, which was the Espionage Act. I believe the dossier, the New York Times may be onto something, that in fact that could be Russian disinformation. That was the bulk of information for FISA applications. That was one direction to spy on the Trump campaign. Another was Stefan Halper approaching Papadopoulos and Clovis and others, and Page. And that to me would be fraud on a court. And then they used the same lying Russian disinformation to bludgeon a duly elected president to take him out. I mean, yeah. Karl.
Well, and then today, Booker is sitting there saying, acting as if nothing ever happened with Christopher Steele going to Moscow, calling up his pals in Moscow and saying, got any dirt on Trump? Same with Kamala Harris. She just grates on me. And she goes after Barr and says, did you ever look at the underlying evidence? He said, well, no. As a matter of fact, I assumed I took as fact what Bob Mueller told me in his 400-page report. Well, she was the chief prosecutor in San Francisco. Can she look the camera straight in the eye and say that on every decision that she made to indict somebody or not indict somebody, that she looked at all the underlying evidence, or did she rely upon the police and the aides? Absolutely right. And yet this is the kind of stuff that they were doing routinely today, and it just speaks to the rage and the anger and the lack of credibility of so many of these Democrats who are on that committee today, who are sitting there presuming to judge when they're saying things that just go straight back at them. Line Dick Blumenthal.
You agree, and then I'm going to give the last word to the senator. You agree with me? This is political suicide, what they're doing for them. I don't want to stop them being stupid, and the new Green Deal is icing on the cake.
Well, I do think it is bad. This is what my column that you were kind enough to mention is about in the Wall Street Journal tomorrow. I wish they wouldn't do it. It's not good for our country, but it's certainly not good for the Democratic Party.
I've already seen it. Sorry. All right, last word. Senator, where do we go from here? Do you believe Hillary might have broken the law? FISA court obstruction happened? In other words, a FISA abuse fraud? And did they try to use Hillary's bought and paid for dossier to unseat a duly elected president? Do you believe all that?
Well, I believe that all of that's possible, and I believe we've got to get the facts, Sean, and that's where we go from here. We find out what happened. We find out what the facts really are. We find out how a spy investigation against a duly elected president got launched. That's what we need to do. If we need a special counsel for that, by the way, I'm all for it. But the American people deserve to know, or else we don't have a democracy.
Well said. All right, thank you both.